Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back into the grimy taverns, dirt-packed cabins, and outhouse-lined roads of colonial America, where people did not rely on running water or scented soap, but on chamber, pots, lye soap, and sheer tolerance for filth. Forget the powdered wigs and polished portraits you see in old paintings. The real story is about scratching lice by candlelight, hauling buckets from frozen wells, and wondering if you might actually die from your neighbor's bathwater. So tonight we ask what hygiene was really like in colonial America. What did it feel like to share a wash tub with your entire family and rinse your teeth with charcoal and rum? Every colony had its own customs, so let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. It's always a treat to see who's brave enough to wade into tonight's dirty truth. Now dim the lights, pull your blanket close, and let's step into the filth together. You wake before the sun, if you slept at all. Your skin clings to linen sheets that haven't seen clean water in a month. The air in the room smells like sweat, wet wood, and something sour. Your brother's foot is wedged under your armpit, and someone else's hair is plastered to your cheek. You're not sure if it's your sister or your cousin. Everyone sleeps in the same bed. The mattress is stuffed with straw. You can feel it poking through the ticking like splinters, shifting beneath you with every breath. It creaks when you move, but no one complains. This bed has been passed down through 3 generations, and you are the newest lumpy body to share it. Your nightshirt is damp, not from water, but from the sweat that pooled on your back and neck while you slept under 3 layers of quilts. There's no such thing as breathable fabric here. Everything itches. Wool itches. Linen itches. Even your skin itches. And it itches worse now because you didn't get to rinse off yesterday's grime before collapsing into bed. Outside, frost clings to the edges of the cabin window. The pain is fogged from the warm breath of a half-dozen sleepers huddled together for body heat. You see your own breath drift up like smoke when you sit up. Cold air slices through the cracks in the wooden walls. There's a draft behind your neck. It finds the gap where your shirt has ridden up, and it cuts like a blade. You tug your blanket tighter, but it's too late. The cold is already in. Next to the bed, the chamber pot waits. You know someone used it during the night. You heard them. Someone got up, shuffled barefoot over cold wooden planks, and relieved themselves in that squat ceramic bowl. And now it sits full. The smell is low and hot, like boiled eggs and vinegar. You try not to breathe through your nose. Someone coughs next to you. It's wet, deep. They cough again, and you feel it shake the mattress. Another person groans, pulling the quilt over their head. No one says anything. Everyone hears it. Everyone knows someone's lungs are worse today. You climb out from under the blankets and step onto the cold floor. Your feet hit the boards, and you hiss. They're damp. Cold seeps up through the soles of your skin like it wants inside your bones. You shuffle toward the wash basin in the corner, careful not to tip it over. It's just a metal bowl perched on a rickety stand, filled halfway with cloudy water from yesterday morning. There's a grey ring of soap scum around the edge. Bits of lint float on the surface. You dunk your fingers in, hoping to splash your face and feel alive. The water is nearly frozen. It burns. You grit your teeth and slap a handful against your cheeks. It doesn't feel refreshing. It feels like punishment. Your nose runs immediately. You wipe it on your sleeve. Everyone does. You look around for the rag meant for drying. It's already wet and stiff. Someone must have used it on their feet last night. You pat your face with the least damp corner and return it to the hook. The cabin smells stronger now. Not like food, not like firewood, just people. Musty, sour, heavy people. Your father is already outside, splitting wood in the frost. You hear the axe thudding into the stump. You hear him spit. He's been up an hour, same as every day. Your mother groans as she sits up and untangles her hair. It stands up in clumps, greasy and matted. She smooths it down with a hand coated in oil from the lamp. There's no time to brush. She ties it back with a strip of cloth and rubs her nose with her knuckle. One of the younger kids crawls over the footboard and makes a beeline for the chamber pot. Everyone pretends not to hear the splash. You keep your eyes on the floor. She puts the lid back on and drags it toward the door to be emptied. Her hands are red from cold, her nose crusted with sleep. She moves without a word. You dress quickly. Or rather, you add more layers on top of what you already wore to bed. There's no privacy in the cabin, and no one cares. You pull your breeches up and tie the strings while trying not to breathe too deeply. Your shirt smells like onions and sweat. You wonder if your socks are drier than they were yesterday. They're not. You put them on anyway. In the far corner, the bed your grandparents use creaks as one of them stirs. They're older, but they don't get better sleeping arrangements, just closer to the hearth. That means a little more warmth and a little less mildew in the air. They'll be slow to rise. Their joints ache worse in the cold. You know your grandmother hasn't relieved herself since last night, and her walk to the privy will be slow, painful, and possibly dangerous. When the cabin door opens, the smell from the chamber pot finally gets a way out. The breeze is bracing. It clears your nose and makes your ears ring. You step outside briefly, barefoot, just to let your face feel the clean air. It's sharp, brighter than you expected. Everything is white and grey. The ground is hard with frost. Smoke drifts from the neighbor's chimney, and you see a chicken hop awkwardly across frozen mud. Back inside, someone has started the fire. The cabin pops and groans as the warmth creeps through the boards. It's not enough yet. Your fingers still ache. Your toes feel like glass. But you're up, and you're still breathing, which in this time means you've already had a luckier morning than most. You crouch by the fire, palms out, waiting for your hands to stop stinging. That ache in your knuckles? It's the kind that sinks deep and stays all day. Cold does not gently fade in colonial mornings. It lingers, clings, sits in your bones like a tenant that won't leave. Your mother drops a log onto the fire with a thud. Sparks shoot out like angry insects, and she doesn't flinch. Her apron is still crusted with yesterday's grease. There's flour in the creases of her sleeves. She's already muttering to herself, already preparing the day's bread, not because she feels like it, because the fire is hot and the flour might not last the week. There is no bathroom routine here, no 10-step skincare process, no hot water, no mirror. You wipe your eyes with the back of your wrist. You wipe your mouth with the same. Your teeth, still coated with whatever grime built up overnight. You'll deal with them later. Maybe. If you remember. And if you can find the salt. A baby starts crying. Not softly, sharp and sudden like a blade. The entire room goes still. Then a shift. The child is lifted, rocked, patted. Her diaper is wet, cloth, soaked and reused. There are no disposables, no scented wipes. Your mother checks it, frowns, and sets it aside for rinsing later in the wash basin. The child is wiped down with an old rag, dampened from the same water you used to splash your face. The smell of the room shifts again. It's always shifting, layering, a kind of domestic rot. Wet wool, old urine, charred ash, boiled onions. It hits you in waves, and you get used to it by breathing shallowly. The rest of the household starts waking up. Coughs echo from the rafters. One of the boys stretches and yawns with his mouth wide open, revealing teeth the color of old wood. Someone steps on a sliver near the hearth and swears quietly. No one offers sympathy. They just keep moving. Now comes the business of the chamber pot. The girl who took it earlier brings it back in, empty. She's wrinkling her nose, trying not to gag from the walk. She poured it out behind the outhouse where the soil is already dark and sour from weeks of the same ritual. Her shoes are wet now, not from rain, from splashback. You don't wash your hands. There is no sink. There is no soap near the door. The fire crackles, and people begin lining up at the basin like it means something. There's no fresh water in it. You're all just taking turns, rubbing hands and faces in the same tired bowl of lukewarm slime. One cloth, too many faces. You don't speak. You just dab, turn, and pretend that's clean. Your brother has a pimple near his ear. It looks swollen, red. He pokes it and hisses. No ointment, no concern, just dirt, and the promise that it'll burst eventually. You look away. It's rude to stare, even at rotting skin. Breakfast is thin, not because you're fasting, because there's nothing left from last night. A bit of porridge if you're lucky. Maybe a crust of bread if no rats got to it first. You wipe out your bowl with your finger and lick it. Your mouth tastes like old iron and wood smoke, but it's enough. For now, you hear your father chopping outside again. You feel the rhythm of it through the floorboards. 1 strike, 2, a grunt. He hasn't washed in 4 days, maybe more. You think back to the last time he took a full bath. You can't remember. He probably can't either. It's not a daily thing. It's not even a weekly thing. It's a when you start to smell yourself kind of thing. Or when someone starts scratching at you in public. When it's finally your turn to relieve yourself. You trudge outside past the woodpile and the chickens. The outhouse is just a leaning shack over a hole, surrounded by flies even in the cold. The door creaks when you open it. You step in, careful not to brush the walls. They're damp, covered in names scratched by bored backsides and idle knives. You squat over the hole, bracing your hands against the sides to keep your balance. It smells like the entire colony. Sweet, sharp, alive. You finish quickly. There's no toilet paper, just a handful of corn husks in the corner. They're dry and scratchy, and you thank the stars it's not summer when they soften and curl. You wipe. You wince. You shuffle back inside with your head down. By the fire, someone's washing their feet, not in a tub, in a bucket. They take off their boots and peel off wool socks that might as well be stitched from mildew. Their toes are pale and cracked, with little black flecks in the creases. You think it might be rot, or maybe coal dust, or just dirt from a dozen days of walking. No one offers to help. They just keep eating. Your uncle clears his throat. He hocks something into the fire. It sizzles. That's the closest he's come to clearing his sinuses in a week. You know his nose has been running. The sleeves of his shirt are stiff from it. He rubs his fingers on the inside of his collar. It's crusted there too. Outside, the sun is rising. The trees cast long shadows across the snow-packed earth. You'll be heading to the well soon, bucket in hand, praying it isn't frozen solid again. Yesterday you had to break the ice with a rock and scoop it out with your hands. Your nails turned blue. You think you lost feeling in your pinky for an hour. The chores are waiting. The filth never ends. But this is how every day starts. You don't expect comfort. You don't hope for warmth. You just breathe through your mouth and count yourself lucky that you woke up at all. You approach the basin like it might bite, because in some ways, it already has. That water sitting in the tin bowl. It's not clean. It's not warm. It's not even new. It's the same bit of half-frozen misery you saw yesterday morning, and maybe the morning before that. You can see where someone splashed it earlier. The waterline's lower now, but the scum ring still clings around the edge, stained with something grey and greasy. This is what passes for washing in colonial America. One bowl, one rag, and one fragile illusion that this counts as cleanliness. You lean over the basin and catch a whiff. It doesn't smell like anything in particular, just old water and worn-out effort. There's a single cloth floating in the bottom like a shipwreck. You fish it out slowly, the way you'd pull a dead mouse from a trap. It's damp, heavy, and stiff around the edges where it dried in awkward folds. You slap the rag against the side of the bowl once, as if that'll clean it. It doesn't. Nothing short of boiling would. But boiling water is for cooking, not vanity. You wring the cloth out with your palms, watching little flecks of something dark squeeze between your fingers. You hope it's just soot. It's better not to ask. You dab your cheeks with the corner of the cloth. It drags against your skin, rough like burlap. It leaves behind more water than it takes off. Your face stings a little, not from heat, but from exposure. Cold water in cold air is not refreshing. It just wakes up every nerve in your skull and makes your teeth ache. There is no soap. Not for this. Soap is precious. It's made from lye and fat and burns your skin if it's mixed wrong. You save it for laundry or for special scrubbing when someone finally admits they smell bad. Today isn't special. Today is just wet cloth and hope. Behind you, someone's muttering about the rag being used too many times. They say it like it's a revelation. Like maybe this time someone will do something about it. No one does. The rag goes back in the basin, floating, soaking up more misery for the next person to pat on their face and pretend that's clean. Your neck itches, probably lice. Everyone has them. You scratch absent-mindedly, then rub your fingers on your breeches. You'll wash your hands eventually, probably with the same rag. There's a cracked mirror hanging crooked on the wall. You step in front of it and catch a glimpse of your own face. Your skin looks pale and patchy, not from sickness, necessarily, just from life. There's a streak of soot across your forehead where you must have rubbed against the wall while sleeping. You spit into your hand, smear it with a finger, and wipe the mark away, sort of. It smudges into a blurry smear, better than nothing. A boy beside you blows his nose directly into the basin. 2 sharp bursts. Then he rinses his hands in the same water and walks away like nothing happened. You stare. He shrugs. This is normal. This is expected. You dip the rag again and tell yourself the germs haven't found you yet. Someone else tries to rinse their mouth with the same water. They take a small sip, swish, then spit back into the bowl. A tiny whirlpool of spit spirals near the rim. No one replaces the water. You step back and pretend you're done. You are. At least for today. You dry your face on your sleeve. Not because it's cleaner, but because it's yours. The inside of your shirt is still dry, so you rub your cheeks against it and leave faint, wet patches that'll freeze the moment you step outside. You glance around the cabin. Everyone's doing the same thing, wiping their faces, scratching at their armpits, running wet fingers through uncombed hair. There's no grooming here, no perfumes or powders. You rake your fingers through your hair, hit a knot, and decide it's not worth it. You smooth it down with your palm and call it good. The baby gets a better bath than you, not because anyone cares more, but because she screams when she's dirty, and people respond to noise. Your mother lifts her shirt, wipes her down with a cleanish cloth, then pats her with flour to keep her skin dry. You've seen her do the same thing to bread dough. It works both ways, apparently. Someone tries to light a candle. The wick sputters. They give up. Smoke fills the corner, and the room smells like burned tallow and desperation. You rub your eyes with the heel of your palm and try not to think about how long it's been since anyone cleaned their fingernails. Later, if you're lucky, someone will heat a pot of water over the fire. Maybe you'll get to rinse your feet. Maybe you'll get to scrub behind your ears. But not today. Today is chores. And if you stink while hauling firewood or gutting fish, no one will mind. They all stink too. This isn't about getting clean. It's about pretending you tried. And that's the best most people ever do. You walk outside, and the air stings your damp skin. The cold hits fast, clinging to every drop still lingering on your cheeks and neck. That half-hearted rinse you gave yourself is already starting to freeze. Your skin tightens. It feels cleaner for a moment, but only because it's numb. A few cabins down, you see your neighbor crouched by her front steps with a tin basin. She's scrubbing her face like she's fighting it. Her hands are red and raw, and she's using a rag that looks like it was once part of a shirt, or a curtain, or a dead husband's undersleeve. It's hard to tell anymore. Nothing stays what it started as. You nod to her. She doesn't nod back. She's too focused. Her kid is screaming inside the cabin, but she keeps scrubbing, like if she gets through this one ritual, maybe today will feel less foul than the last. A dog runs past. It smells worse than the chamber pot. You wonder if it's been licking the privy again. Its tail is matted, and you're pretty sure there's something living in its fur. It trots toward the butcher's place, probably hunting scraps. Back inside, the fire's warming the floorboards, but the stink hasn't improved. A new smell is climbing through the air. Someone has decided to clean their feet. Not with soap, of course. That's a luxury. They've just pulled off their boots, shoved them near the hearth, and started picking at the skin between their toes with a dull spoon. You see bits of lint, maybe dried skin, maybe worse, gathering in the cracks of the wood. You pretend you didn't notice. So does everyone else. You go back to the wash basin. Not because you want to, but because you forgot your ears. They itch. You wet your fingers in what's left of the water and press them behind your ears. The skin is waxy. There's a crust. You dig at it gently, hoping no one's watching. You scrape something loose and flick it to the floor. That counts as grooming. A man walks in with mud up to his knees and blood under his fingernails. He doesn't say where he's been. He doesn't need to. He just makes a beeline for the basin, spits into it, and wipes his hands on the cloth. It turns from grey to something closer to brown. Then he slaps the towel back on the hook and stretches like he owns the place. He probably does. This is a town where cleaning yourself is mostly about appearances. You splash your face in the morning, not to get clean, but to look slightly less dead. If you're lucky, no one will notice the lice in your collar. If you're unlucky, you'll be the one asked to hold down the neighbor boy while they comb his scalp with a fork and a prayer. There's a brush hanging on the wall. Someone once used it for hair. Now it's stiff and tangled with old threads, and God knows what else. No one touches it anymore. It sits there like a ghost of good intentions, too dirty to help, too familiar to throw away. You look down at your fingernails. They're black at the base. You pick at them with your teeth, chew a bit off, and spit it into the fireplace. It sizzles. You wipe the corner of your mouth with the same sleeve you dried your face on. And somehow that feels like progress. A knock at the door. A neighbor. She needs help lifting a barrel. Her apron is stained with something red and sticky. You hope it's berries. Probably not. She thanks your mother, then rubs her chin with the back of her hand. There's a flake of skin stuck to her cheek, and you watch her smear it across her jaw without realizing. No one is clean. No one even expects to be. What matters is that you tried. You went through the motions. You splashed your face. You wiped your mouth. You wore the good shirt, the one that only smells a little. That's effort. That's hygiene. You watch as your uncle takes the cloth from the basin again. He doesn't look at it. He just slaps it on his face, rubs it into his neck, and tosses it back into the water. You can hear the cloth hit with a wet slap. A ripple moves across the surface. That water has seen 10 different faces today, maybe 12, and it will see more, because no one is going to change it, not until it's empty, or until someone spills it. Whichever comes first. Later before dinner, you'll splash your hands again, just the fingertips, just enough to convince yourself you're not touching your food with filth. You'll pass the basin to the next person, and they'll do the same. The water will keep getting darker, more mysterious. Like soup no one asked for, you sit by the fire and feel the stiffness creeping back into your skin. That water dried quickly, but it left a tightness, a crust. You scratch your cheek, and a flake comes off under your nail. Dead skin, maybe ash, maybe the ghost of soap long gone. You remember hearing someone say that true cleanliness is next to godliness. That person has never slept 3 deep in a bed full of coughing cousins. That person has never reused a washcloth that smells like feet and mold. That person has never licked their finger to clean dirt from their face and called it success. Clean, in colonial terms, is relative. Clean is not about removing filth. It's about pushing it just far enough away that you can function. Tomorrow, the rag will still be there. Tomorrow, the basin will still be half full and half foul. And tomorrow, you'll do the same thing all over again. Because that's what hygiene looks like when water is cold, soap is rare, and pretending is all you've got. You run your tongue across your teeth and immediately regret it. It feels like a barn wall. Rough. Coated. There's something thick near the molars. A film that's been there since yesterday, maybe longer. It tastes like old stew and wood smoke. You smack your lips and swallow hard, but the taste stays. There is no toothbrush waiting for you. No mint-flavored paste in a porcelain cup. No bristles. No floss. Just your fingers. And maybe a bit of charcoal, if you remembered to grab some from the hearth last night before it got soaked with bacon grease. You shuffle toward the fire and pick through the ashes until you find a blackened stump of wood. It flakes in your hand, still warm, still sharp smelling. You rub it between your fingers until it crumbles into soot. Then, you dip the tip of your finger into the ash and press it to your teeth. The first rub is gritty. It crunches. It squeaks a little against the enamel, if you still have any left. You drag your finger back and forth, scrubbing blindly, trying not to gag. You work your way around the edges, poking between the gaps where food has been rotting since last week. There's no mirror for this. You don't need one. You're not cleaning for beauty. You're cleaning for survival. Your gums are bleeding again. They do that now, every time. They puff up and turn red when you eat anything tough, and now they're giving way under your charcoal finger. You spit into the fire. The sizzle confirms you've still got some blood left. This is what passes for oral hygiene in your world. There are no dental visits, no polished smiles. Teeth fall out when they're ready, or when they get kicked, or when the rot makes them soft enough to pull with a rag and a spoon. You rinse your mouth with a splash of yesterday's cider. It's gone vinegary, but that helps. The acid cuts through the grime. You swish it around. It burns the soft part under your tongue, but you like it better than nothing. You spit it into the dirt and watch it freeze at the edges. Your cousin walks past you chewing on a twig. It's willow bark, supposed to help with toothaches. He gnaws on it like a beaver, eyes half shut, jaw moving slowly. He hasn't said anything since he lost the bottom right incisor last week, bit into a bone and it snapped clean off. He tied it with twine and yanked it himself. There was no ceremony, just blood and a rag and a quiet moan in the corner. Some people use cloth. Old strips soaked in vinegar or rum, wrapped around a finger and jammed into their mouths. You tried that once. The taste of the cloth was worse than your own breath. You nearly vomited before you got past the second molar. Your breath is sour by noon no matter what. Everyone's is. Talking to someone face to face is like standing near an open trash bin in the sun. People turn their heads when they speak. Not out of manners, but because mouth rot is real and it travels fast. You know a man who chews cloves every morning. Expensive habit. Smells better, sure, but now his teeth are stained black and his gums are raw. He says it's worth it. You're not so sure. Your aunt once told you that you should rinse with spirits daily. You tried it for a week. Your lips cracked and you burned the inside of your cheek. The rum made you lightheaded and sleepy, but your mouth did feel cleaner for a few hours, until you ate salt pork and it all came back. You don't know anyone with perfect teeth. Some are better than others, sure. The preacher's wife has most of hers still. She scrapes them with a little pick made from bone, keeps it in her apron pocket like a holy relic. One time you saw her pick something out mid-sermon and flick it under the pew. It was white, not food, probably a fragment. Old people don't smile much, not just because of grief or pride, but because smiling shows teeth. And teeth are shame, yellowed, crooked, cracked, or gone altogether. Better to keep your lips closed and nod politely. Pretend the pain is gone. Your grandfather whistles through the gaps in his mouth. He has 6 teeth, all near the front. He keeps a little jar of salt by his bed. In the mornings, he dips a wet cloth in it and rubs it along his gums. He says it keeps the swelling down. You've seen him spit blood into the corner and keep going like nothing happened. There's a boy in town who hasn't eaten solid food in weeks. Tooth abscess. His cheek swelled up like a gourd, then split open. Now he drinks broth and cries in his sleep. No one wants to be him. But you're not far off. No one is. You think about how much of your day is spent managing your mouth, picking at it, soothing it, hiding it. You clench your jaw when you laugh, so no one sees the dark parts. You talk with your lips tight. You avoid biting into anything too sharp or too chewy. You dream about apples, but eat boiled roots. Your smile is a weapon if you're not careful. Flash it too quick, and someone might flinch, not from fear, from smell. And yet, you're one of the lucky ones. You still have most of your teeth. You can still chew your bread and rinse your mouth without crying. You've only pulled one, and it came out clean. No root left behind. You kept it in a pouch for a while. Then you tossed it in the fire, because here, even your own body betrays you, one tooth at a time. Someone screaming down by the blacksmiths. You know that sound. Not rage, not grief. It's tooth pain. Sharp, hot, the kind that shoots behind your eye and makes your ear throb like a drum. You've heard it before, and you'll hear it again. You wince without realizing. They're probably tying him to a stool. That's the usual method. 2 people holding him down, one prying his mouth open with the handle of a spoon, and another using pliers. Not surgical ones, not clean, just iron tongs from the hearth, wiped with a bit of cloth and dipped in rum, if they remember. No one goes to a dentist here. There is no dentist. There's a man with strong arms and no fear of blood. That's the closest you'll get. You remember when it was your turn, that throbbing in your jaw, the taste of something metallic. You tried to endure it, chewing on leather, rinsing with salt, but the root didn't care. It had already gone bad. The swelling made your eye close halfway. You couldn't eat. You couldn't sleep. So they tied you to the stool too. It came out on the second yank. A jagged little horror, black at the base, white at the tip. It bled for hours. You stuffed a rag in your mouth and changed it every time it soaked through. The taste stayed with you for days. You didn't speak. You didn't smile. And when you finally did, it was with one less tooth. Back at the fire, someone is poking at a boiled root with their tongue. He nudges it between teeth, testing for tenderness. You hear him grunt when it hits something sore. He puts it back on his plate and pretends he wasn't hungry anyway. That's the trick here. You don't just live with bad teeth. You live around them. You chew on the left side. You talk through clenched lips. You hold your jaw when the cold wind sets in, because the air makes your nerves scream. Someone once said, putting tobacco ash on your gums can numb the pain. You tried that too. It worked. But it burned like fire and left your tongue black for a week. Still better than screaming. Still better than asking your cousin to pry your mouth open. There's a girl in the next cabin who has never lost a tooth. She's 13. Everyone stares at her like she's a walking miracle. Her smile is bright, even, clean. They say she was born with good bones. Or maybe her mother fed her rabbit broth every day while she was growing. Or maybe she just hasn't bitten into anything unlucky yet. Either way, you envy her, but not loudly. You don't say anything. Because eventually, time will catch her too. Sooner or later, everyone's mouth betrays them. You run your finger along your lower gum. There's a bump there. Not big, not soft, but it wasn't there last week. You poke at it gently and taste copper. You stop. You'll check it again tomorrow, or the next day, unless it swells. Then you'll heat the iron and start preparing. The preacher gave a sermon once about purity, about keeping the body clean as a vessel for the soul. You remember watching him speak, his mouth wide open, gums sagging, two teeth swinging loose like rotten fence posts. His breath rolled out in waves. The front row had tears in their eyes. Not from the spirit, from the stench. Your own spirit feels far from clean. You can't remember the last time your mouth felt fresh, the last time you bit into something and didn't wonder if it would cost you a molar. Your aunt swears by burnt bread crusts. Every morning, she scrapes the black part off with a knife, rubs it between her fingers, and packs it onto her gums like it's medicine. She says it draws out the poison. You don't ask how she knows. You just nod and pass her the stale loaf. The worst part isn't the rot. It's the smell, not just yours. Everyone's. Breath hangs in the air like fog, thick, sweet, foul. It clings to clothes, settles in corners, creeps into food. You smell it when people talk, when they laugh, when they cry. It's part of them now. You've tried chewing herbs. Mint, when you can find it. Parsley, if it's not already wilted in the corner of someone's stew. Once, you found a dried orange peel and chewed it for an hour. You felt fancy. But the taste left, and the film returned. You watch a boy rub his teeth with a twig. He's grinding it into his molars like a pestle in a mortar. Bits of bark fall onto his shirt. He spits and keeps going. You nod. That's about as good as it gets. Cleanliness is not a destination here. It's a game of inches, of pretending, of just enough effort to fool yourself into thinking you've done something right. You spit into the fire again and watch it hiss. A little blood, a little black, a little breath. You smile, barely, just to check. It still hurts. That means you're alive. The tub creaks when you step in, groaning under your weight like it's already had enough. That's because it has. You're the third person in it today. Maybe the fourth. You're not sure anymore, and asking won't make it better. The water is warm in some places, cold in others. It smells like lard and ash and skin. Tiny flakes float around your thighs. Dead skin, bits of soot, hair, something unidentifiable that you choose not to look at. You sit slowly, trying not to make waves. The last thing you want is any of that floating debris brushing against your face. Bath night comes once a month if things are calm, less often if they're not. No one's doing this for comfort. It's not a ritual of peace. It's a negotiation with grime. You've been layered in smoke, sweat, mud and livestock stench for weeks now, and this is the only mercy you're likely to get. The tub is made of wood, splintered in places. One side leaks if you fill it too high, so the water is kept shallow. You crouch in it, curled knees and hunched spine, like a boiled spider. There is no soap in sight. Just hot water, a rag, and the hope that heat alone will do something. The water was hauled from the well 3 hours ago, bucket by bucket, then dumped into the big pot over the fire. It took 6 rounds and blistered palms to get enough. Heating it was worse. The fire's been going all day just to bring the pot to a boil, and once it's hot, it cools quickly. Everyone bathes in stages fast, quiet, and without complaint. Your mother was first. She scrubbed quickly, muttering prayers. Then your father. He didn't say much, just grunted, dunked, and dried. He left a ring of grey around the inner rim. Then came the younger kids. They giggled, splashing, whispering. But that water's long gone now. Now it's you. You take the cloth and start with your neck. That's always the worst. A crust forms there, a mix of sweat, smoke, and oil. You scrape it off in streaks, watching the water turn cloudier with each pass. You move to your chest, then under your arms. That's where the smell lives. You scrub until it burns, until the skin feels raw. Then you dip the rag again and keep going. No one is watching, but you still feel like you're being observed. Bathing is private, but not really. The room is small. The door creaks. Someone always walks in, pretends they forgot. They catch a glimpse, grunt, and step back out. There are no locks, no modesty, just moments. You wash your feet, last. They've been in boots for weeks. The water near them darkens instantly. You scrub the toes, the cracks in your heels, the bruises. You wipe between the toes, then throw the rag across the room. It lands on a chair. No one picks it up. It will be used again tomorrow. There's no shampoo. You use the same water on your scalp. You dunk your head, hold your breath, and go under. When you come back up, the water's cooler. You slick your hair back with your hands. It sticks, oily, flat, but better, maybe. You stay in the tub a minute longer than you should, not because it feels good, but because it feels like pause, stillness. You know you'll smell better for a day, maybe two. Then the dirt will creep back in. It always does. You stand. The air hits you like a slap, cold, sharp. You grab the same towel everyone else used. It's damp. It smells like skin and mildew, but it's the only one. You pat yourself dry, avoiding eye contact with your own limbs. Everything looks worse when it's wet. You dress quickly. Your cleanest clothes still smell faintly of last month's stew, but they're dry. That's enough. Behind you, someone's already pouring in more hot water. Your brother steps in, grumbling about how cold the bottom feels. You hear him sigh. You don't look back. You just step outside, barefoot on the floorboards, hair dripping down your spine. Later, when you lie in bed, you'll feel the heat from the bath still clinging to your skin, but so will the itch. From the wool, from the soap scum, from the cloth that was never fully clean. And when you wake up tomorrow, you'll already feel the oil returning, the sweat forming, the grime settling in again like it never left. Because in colonial America, baths aren't about staying clean. They're about delaying the inevitable. The tub is still there the next morning, water cold and cloudy like broth someone forgot to strain. Bits of hair cling to the rim. A single toenail floats in the corner like a boat made of regret. No one wants to be the one to dump it. That means lifting it, hauling it outside, sloshing the entire family's filth across the threshold and into the yard. So it waits. So does everyone else. You step over it on your way to the fire. The floor is damp around it. Someone already spilled part of the bath. It'll dry. Eventually. Your mother says you were lucky to get a bath this month. Last winter, the well froze for 6 weeks. The snow was too dirty to melt and the rain barrel cracked. Everyone just wiped themselves down with vinegar and hoped their sweat wouldn't rot the seams of their shirts. You remember the stink. How every room smelled like wool, feet, and smoke. The kind of smell that seeps into your lungs and stays there. A bath means someone had time to chop wood. Someone had strength to carry the buckets. Someone didn't die that week. Bathing means nothing went horribly wrong. At least for now. Your little brother is still damp from last night. His hair is stuck to one side, flattened like a squirrel on a wagon trail. He hasn't changed his underclothes. They're still clinging to his knees like damp parchment. He scratches his leg and sniffs his fingers. He shrugs. It's not worse than usual. The bathwater by now has cooled into something thick. It doesn't look like water anymore. More like soup, opaque, slightly green in one spot. There's a film floating on the top. Oil, skin, fat, life. You wonder if animals in the forest get this filthy, or if this is a uniquely human disgrace. Outside, your father is pouring fresh ash over the latrine pit. It steams slightly in the cold air. Everything steams when it's warmer than the ground. Even the tub, when you first filled it, gave off little curls of fog. You thought it looked peaceful then. Now it just looks like a mistake. Some families keep the tub outside, bathe under the open sky. Less cleanup, they say. Easier to dump. But that means cold wind on bare skin. That means neighbors catching glimpses they shouldn't. That means raccoons sniffing around after dark. So your family keeps the tub inside, next to the hearth, near the kitchen table, where food and filth can mingle like old friends. You once saw a family use the same water for cooking after a bath. Boiled potatoes in it, claimed it added flavor. You vomited behind the barn and didn't eat for a day. You sit on a stool and peel your foot wraps off. They're still wet from yesterday. You hang them near the fire and watch steam rise from them. They stink, not like dung, not like meat, something in between. Human. There's still some hot water in the kettle, but not enough for another bath. You think about dipping a rag in and wiping your face, but the rag is gone. Someone used it to clean the table. Now it's lying in the corner, stiff with food scraps and crumbs. You decide your face is clean enough. Your uncle visits just after noon. He hasn't bathed in 3 months. He walks in like he owns the air. His boots are caked in manure. His beard is matted. There's something dark under his fingernails. He hugs your mother. She doesn't flinch. No one comments on the smell. That would be rude. He asks if the tub's been emptied. No one answers. He walks over, peers in, sniffs once, and laughs. He says he's seen pig troughs cleaner. Then he spits into it and sits down to eat. You ask your sister if she wants to help clean it. She looks at you like you've spoken in tongues. Clean it. It's water. It's done its job. It'll soak into the ground just fine. You stop asking. Eventually, someone will carry it outside. Slop the water into the yard. The chickens will peck around it. A dog might roll in it. And the tub will be leaned against the house, waiting for next month. Until then, it sits, a wooden monument to temporary cleanliness. Proof that, for a single night, you weren't coated in filth. Not completely. You go to bed that night still itchy, not because you're dirty, but because you're clean, and your skin isn't used to it. It feels raw, new, like you've peeled off something protective. The mattress smells worse now, not because it's changed, but because you have. You're clean, and it isn't. You notice the straw is damp in the middle. There's a sourness to it, a weight. You curl into yourself and try not to breathe too deeply. By morning, you'll blend back into the scent of the house, of people, of life, and the bath will be just another thing no one talks about until it's needed again. You don't trust the soap. No one does. It's homemade after all, boiled up in a blackened pot out back, using a recipe passed down by people who probably didn't live past 40. You've seen it made. You know what goes in. Animal fat, ashes, rainwater if you're lucky, swamp water if you're not, stirred for hours with a stick that also gets used to chase dogs off the porch. It looks more like cheese than soap. Yellow-grey, dense, pitted like a graveyard tooth. You pick it up and it's sticky in your hand. Not slick, not pleasant, sticky. It leaves a film on your fingers before you've even added water. They call it lye soap. But soap is generous. It's more of a weapon, a punishment, a gamble. You dip the corner into your wash basin. The water clouds instantly. It hisses slightly, which is never a good sign. Then you rub it between your hands. It doesn't foam, just smears, like melted wax with sharp edges. You lather your palms and feel your skin tighten, then burn. The burn means it's working, they say. You press it to your neck, and the sting flares up like a spark under the skin. You gasp. Rub faster. Faster means you finish sooner. The trick is to get the dirt off before the soap takes a layer of you with it. You can't use it every day, not unless you want to bleed. But when it's time to scrub, after mucking stalls, butchering pigs, or hauling spoiled food, it's the only thing that cuts through the grime. It strips the grease, the stink, the memory of filth. And sometimes your skin too. Your sister tried to use it on her face once, just once. The rash lasted a week. Her cheeks peeled like old parchment. She cried herself to sleep with a rag of boiled chamomile pressed to her skin. The soap went nowhere near her face after that. Now she uses just warm water and curses quietly. The bar cracks as it dries. You watch it on the windowsill, slowly splitting down the center like a wound. Bits of ash and hair are visible inside, like it's fossilized the past month of your life. You don't know what animal the fat came from. Probably pig. Might be something else. You try not to ask. When it's fresh, the soap is worse. Caustic. Unforgiving. It leaves red marks, especially if you scrub too hard. But wait too long and it turns brittle, crumbles in your hands. Then it's just wasted pain. You used it last winter after cleaning out the privy trench. The stink had worked into your skin, into your bones. You could smell it in your fingernails. No amount of scrubbing helped. You took the soap and scrubbed until the skin cracked. Your hands bled through the cloth that night, but the smell was gone. They say you can test the strength by dipping a feather in it. If the feather dissolves, it's too strong. If it floats, too weak. But who has feathers to spare? No one in your house is wasting good poultry just to measure burn. So you learn by trial. A small patch on your arm, behind the knee, the underside of your wrist. If it reddens, you stop. If it blisters, you curse. If it tingles, you keep going. Bathing with lye soap is not relaxing. It's strategic. You wash quickly, methodically, elbows, knees, soles, palms, anywhere the skin is tough. Anywhere you don't care if it stings. Your grandmother keeps a bar in a box near the hearth. She wraps it in cloth, like it's sacred. She says she learned to make it after the war, when nothing clean was left but bones and ash. She stirs the pot like she's conjuring spirits. No measuring, no recipe, just memory. She squints at the mix, mutters to herself, and hopes for the best. Sometimes it comes out too strong, sometimes too soft. Once, it melted in the rain and glued itself to the porch. Your uncle had to scrape it up with a spade. They used it on the horse tack afterward. No one wanted to waste it, and it's never scented. Never. No herbs, no flowers. You don't waste lavender on soap when it can go in tea. If it smells like anything, it's smoke, or meat, or ash. You can't scrub that scent out. It follows you, clings to your skin, but you get used to it. You remember being young and watching the bar get passed around the room. One basin, one rag, one soap. Your father scrubbing his neck, your brother doing his feet, your mother cleaning your baby sister. Then it was your turn. The water was brown, the soap was soggy, but no one complained. That was just life. You still have scars on your knuckles from when you rubbed too hard one spring, trying to impress a girl who said you looked like you'd been born in a pigsty. You washed every inch of yourself until your hands went raw. She still didn't look at you. You think about that sometimes, when the soap bites into your skin, how you can try to clean, to scrape, to fix, but it never really goes away. Not the smell, not the grime, not the judgment. Lye soap doesn't make you new. It just makes you slightly less old. Tomorrow, you'll touch the bar again. You'll test the edge, feel the grit, maybe wash your hands, maybe not. Depends how much blood you're willing to trade for clean, because in this world, cleanliness is not gentle. It's earned with burning, The soap bar is smaller now. Each wash whittles it down like a chunk of regret. You hold it in your palm and feel how uneven it's become. One side sharp, the other soft like wet cheese. You try to grip it, but it slips once, drops into the dirt near the fire, rolls into a clump of dog hair. You sigh, pick it up, wipe it off with your shirt. It's still usable. Nothing gets thrown out here, especially not soap. Doesn't matter if it's half melted or laced with soot. Doesn't matter if someone sneezed on it. If it still burns, it still works. Your cousin used to say lye soap was a punishment sent from God, that it was proof we weren't meant to be clean in this life. You believed him after the first time it blistered your hands. You were only 10, trying to wash up after chasing pigs through the muck. You rubbed so hard you peeled away a patch of skin on your thumb. The sting lasted days. Your cousin laughed, said, "Congratulations, you're baptized now." People whisper about families that use bought soap, the kind that comes in a wrapper. They say it smells like roses, like lemons, like cities. No one you know has actually used it. Maybe the doctor's wife, maybe the governor's mistress. But not anyone with calluses on their hands or grease behind their ears. You tried making scented soap once. You crushed up some mint leaves and stirred them into the pot while your grandmother was out back. She smacked you when she saw the specks, said it was a waste of good flavor, and now the whole batch was ruined. That bar dried lumpy, molded in 2 days. You never tried again. Now the idea of scented soap almost offends you. Why would you want to smell like something you can't eat? Why would you want to trick people's noses when your body tells the truth? You've learned to scrub with purpose. You've learned which parts of your body can handle the sting and which parts can't. Behind the knees is safe. Neck, yes. Elbows, sure. But don't even try your chest if you've been in the sun. That skin peels like an old apple. And don't let it touch your privates unless you want to spend the evening howling into a towel. Still, it beats being filthy. Kind of. You've seen what happens to people who stop bathing altogether. The neighbor, 2 houses down, hasn't touched soap in months. He says it strips the soul. Says the body should learn to clean itself, like the animals do. But his house smells like damp fur and vinegar. His clothes stand up on their own when he takes them off. His feet have turned green in spots. You stopped shaking his hand months ago. But even you can't scrub every week. There isn't time. There isn't wood. There isn't water. Baths are planned like harvest, and soap is hoarded like medicine. When the bar gets too small to hold, you press it into a new one, fuse it together with heat and hope. Sometimes it works, sometimes it falls apart. You've seen a bar explode in someone's hands, cracked open like bad bread, flaking into bits of ash and fat. They cried. Not from pain, from the loss. You don't cry anymore. You just scrub. The neighbors traded you a new bar last month. Said theirs came from a tallow mix with less ash. Claimed it was gentler. They lied. It peeled the skin off your shins in long pink strips. You used it to wash your boots instead. They came out clean enough to be mistaken for new. Your mother keeps her soap wrapped in cloth. She hides it in a box, tucked beneath her mending threads. She only uses it on feast days and funerals. Says the smell reminds her of her own mother. You've sniffed it once, sharp, clean, almost like pine. You wanted to lick it just to see. You didn't. But the thought stayed with you for days. Every now and then, someone will boast about no longer needing soap, about having skin so strong, so used to filth, that it simply doesn't get dirty anymore. You nod, smile, keep your mouth shut, but you see them itch when no one's looking. You see them avoid fires, because smoke makes the stench rise. You know the truth. Their dirt just settled into their skin like a second soul. You sit by the fire and rub what's left of your bar against your palm. It's soft now, mushy, a bad peach. You smear it across your knuckles, then wipe the excess on your trousers. They're stained already. One more mark won't matter. Someone knocks over the basin. It spills onto the floorboards, soapy water pooling under the table. Your sister groans, grabs a rag and starts dabbing at it, but you know the wood's already soaked. It'll swell tonight, maybe warp. You'll deal with it later. You stare at your hands. They look cleaner, redder. Lines stand out in sharp detail, a little raw, but the grime's gone. For now, the soap is back on the windowsill, crusting over. It'll be hard by morning, tough as bone. You'll chip away at it then. Use a knife if you have to. Because this is the only thing between you and the filth. It doesn't matter if it hurts. Pain is just the price you pay to be less disgusting. You wake up scratching. Again. Behind the ear, under the chin, then the back of your neck, where the hairline ends in a greasy mess of sweat and straw. You scratch until it hurts, and then keep going. Because it never really helps. It just distracts you from how filthy it feels to wear your own scalp. Everyone has lice. You know that by now. The preacher has lice. The midwife has lice. Your baby cousin had them crawling in her eyebrows once. They are not a secret. They are not a surprise. They are simply a part of you, like your teeth, like your breath, like your sin. There was a time when you tried to get rid of them, long ago, when you still believed in soap and heat and boiling things until the bugs died. But the lice always came back, sometimes in greater numbers, as if angry, as if multiplying out of spite. So you learned to live with them, to comb, to pinch, to distract yourself with powder and prayer. Your mother keeps a tin of flour by the bed, not for cooking, for dusting. When the itching gets bad, she shakes a little into her hands and pats it across her scalp. It leaves you pale and patchy like a half-baked ghost. But it dries the grease and chokes the bugs, or at least slows them down. You have sat for hours, while someone dabbed flour into your part line with fingers sticky from molasses. You have tilted your head while a comb made from fishbone scraped along your skull like a rake through soil. It helps, sometimes, until the sweating starts again, until the heat turns the powder to paste and the paste starts to stink. You know when someone is hiding an infestation. You can see it in the way they tilt their head, in the way they wince when someone brushes past them, in the way they pick at their collar. They wear their shame like a second skin. You wore it too. You still do. Wigs are supposed to fix that. For the wealthy, for the landowners, for the judges who do not want their real heads seen in public. They powder them white and curl them into shapes not found in nature. They wear them high and proud like false crowns. But even wigs cannot escape the lice. Beneath the powder, beneath the wax, there is heat, moisture, oil. And where there is oil, there is life. Bugs crawl through the curls, lay eggs in the seams, sleep near the scalp. There are stories of men removing their wigs and finding nests underneath, of bugs so fat they fell out onto the courtroom floor. Your uncle had a wig once, said it made him look like a gentleman. He wore it to town and caught the attention of a woman who ran a boarding house. They sat close that night. When he came home, he was scratching his temple so hard it bled. The wig was burned the next morning. He never wore another. You have never owned one. You could never afford the powder, let alone the hair. But you have seen them up close, at church, at weddings. You have watched the curls glisten with sweat and tallow under candlelight. You have seen children gape at them like they are staring at wild animals. You have heard women whisper about who wears what and how much it cost. Most wigs are made from horsehair, some from goat. The fine ones come from real people, hair cut from the dead, hair sold by the desperate, hair gathered in back alleys and boiled in vats to kill whatever lived in it before. The powder used on wigs is no cleaner. A mix of flour, starch, and crushed roots, sometimes scented with lavender, sometimes not. It clogs the nose, makes you sneeze, leaves white rings around the collar, but it covers the grease. It hides the truth. Some women tie their hair up in cloth and leave it like that for weeks. They say it keeps the lice from spreading. Others coat their braids in goose fat and then wash it out with vinegar. You tried that once. The vinegar stung your eyes. The fat melted down your neck. You smelled like a pickled roast for 3 days. Children are shaved bald sometimes. Easier to control the infestation. You remember when they did it to your brother. He cried for hours. Said he felt like a rat. The hair never grew back the same. It came in patchy, thin. He wears a hat now, even in the heat. You have a comb you use at night, a long-toothed thing carved from bone. You drag it through your hair and listen for the sound of eggs breaking. Snap, snap, snap. Each one a little victory. Each one a reminder that they are still there, that they never left. Once, you found one on your pillow, fat, full. You crushed it with your thumb and stared at the blood on your skin. Your blood, reclaimed. There are folk cures. Some say rub your scalp with onions. Others suggest burnt tobacco. One old woman swore by squirrel fat mixed with garlic. You tried it once. The smell drove your siblings from the room. But the bugs stayed. Maybe they liked the seasoning. At the end of the day, you tie your hair back with a scrap of cloth. You dust your neck with flour. You place your comb under your pillow like a charm. And you pray. Not for cleanliness. That is a lie you gave up long ago. You pray only that no one sees you scratch in public. Because in colonial America, hygiene is not about being clean. It is about pretending you are not crawling. You can feel them now. Not just the itch, but the movement. A crawling sensation that slides along your scalp like a fingertip that does not belong to you. You freeze. You press your hand to your hair and try to catch whatever it is. Your fingers come back empty. That is always the way. They are faster than you, or smarter, or both. In daylight, you can sometimes spot them in the mirror. Little shadows, scurrying just behind the ears or near the nape of your neck where the skin is softest. You squint, you lean in, you lift the hair, and there they are. Eggs, white specks clinging to the strands like tiny ticks. You pinch them between your nails and crush them. You hear the snap, you feel it. Then you do it again. Your mother says that lice are God's reminder that man was born from dust, that you return to the earth piece by piece and the bugs are simply helping you get there. She says it while picking through your sister's braids with the fine comb, eyes narrowed, lips tight. She says it without blinking as she drops each louse into the fire. You used to flinch every time she found one on you. Now you just sit still. Let her work. Let her mutter her curses and prayers and scratch her own scalp when she thinks no one is looking. No one is free from it. Even the cleanest head hides something. The town doctor says it is a matter of heat and habit. Lice thrive in warmth. They love tight collars and wool caps. He tells people to air out their heads, leave their wigs off at night, comb with vinegar, soak combs in hot water, burn old scarves. But no one listens. Wigs are too expensive to leave uncovered, and vinegar stings. And no one wants to sleep without a cap, because that is how the cold gets in. You remember the woman who shaved her head and wore a bonnet for a full season. She said it was liberation, said she felt like a new soul. But people whispered, said it was unnatural, said she was touched. And when her hair grew back thin and crooked, they said it was punishment for vanity. There are rules about how often you are supposed to wash your hair. Some say once a month. Some say only during the full moon. You do it when the itching becomes too much to bear, when you cannot sleep, when your scalp is raw and your fingernails come away with blood beneath them. The soap you use is the same that scrubs your skin. It stings your scalp worse than anything. You tilt your head and let the lye run down your temples. You squeeze your eyes shut and pray it does not get in. It has before. It burned for hours. You screamed and no one came. They said it was your fault. They said you should have been more careful. After the washing, you sit by the fire with a towel around your shoulders. Your hair steams. You smell like smoke and meat and regret. Someone brings the powder, not just flour this time, ground roots, ash, crushed petals if there are any left from the last gathering. They rub it into your hair and say it will keep the bugs away. You nod, even though you know it is a lie. Wigs are out of the question for you. They cost more than you earn in a season, but you know the rituals of those who wear them. You have watched from a distance as they unwrap their wigs from cloth, as they turn them over in their hands like prized fruit, as they pick through the curls and pluck out what does not belong. One woman uses tweezers made from bone. Another uses the tip of a heated needle. You saw her burn a louse on the spot. It curled and smoked and disappeared into her lap. She did not blink. At the market, someone sells perfumed powder for wigs, a soft pink dust in a wooden box. It smells like cinnamon and rot. You sniff it once and cough for a full minute. The vendor smiles and says it is made with crushed violets. You do not believe him. You walk away with your hands in your pockets and your scalp on fire. Your cousin wears a wig on Sundays, says it makes him look respectable, but you have seen the inside of it, lined with grease, crawling. He powders it every morning with a flour sifter and hopes no one sees the flakes fall. He keeps a stick in his boot to scratch behind his ear without using his fingers. He thinks it is subtle. It is not. There is nothing subtle about lice. They expose you, humiliate you. They live in your hair and your sheets and your hats. They follow you into your dreams. You have dreamed of rivers full of bugs, of combs breaking in your hand, of pulling a nest from your scalp like a clump of twine soaked in oil. When you wake up, your pillow is damp, your hair is tangled, your fingers are already scratching. You boil your scarf, you hang it near the fire, you check the seams, you shake out your bedding, you beat your coat with a stick. You clean everything, except the one thing that will never be clean, your own head. In the end, you sit quietly by the hearth, a small mirror in your lap, a comb in one hand. The sound of scraping fills the room. Snap, 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 and when the fire gets low, you lean in and toss the bugs into the embers. You watch them curl and vanish, one by one. Because in colonial America, lice are not just a nuisance. They are a fact of life, and life does not care if you are crawling. Your shirt could stand up on its own. That is the first thing you notice when you take it off. The cloth has stiffened with sweat, oil, and time. The underarms are darker than the rest. The collar is glossy with grime. It makes a sound when it hits the ground, not a soft rustle, more like a slap, a wet slap, like something that should not be touched. You have not washed it in weeks, maybe longer. You cannot remember the last time it saw water, but you have aired it. That counts. You hung it on the porch rail for an hour last Sunday. Let the wind blow through it. Let the sun bleach the worst of the stink. That is enough. That is what people do, because no one washes their clothes here. Not really. Washing ruins fabric. That is what your aunt says. Too much water, and scrubbing wears holes. Better to shake out the dust. Better to hang them high, and let the smoke do the rest. You smell like smoke most days. Not the good kind. Not cedar or pine. The greasy, bitter kind. The kind that comes from low fires and wet logs. It sticks to everything. Your sleeves, your boots, your hair. But it covers other smells. That is what matters. Better to smell like smoke than what is underneath. Washing is work. First you need water. Buckets and buckets hauled from the well or creek. Then wood for boiling. Then a tub. Then soap. Not the good kind. The harsh kind. The kind that strips color and skin in equal measure. You need time. You need space. You need arms strong enough to wring out wool without snapping your wrists. You are not even sure it makes a difference. Because the moment you put the shirt back on, it begins again. The The sweat, the dirt, the way it clings to your back in the heat and freezes to your chest in the cold. The way it traps the stink of your skin like a jar traps flies. Your trousers are worse, stiff in the knees, blackened at the hems. One patch is always damp. You do not ask why. You do not want to know. You beat them against a tree once, hoping the dust would fall out. It did, and something else fell out too. A beetle, maybe two. You did not look closely. Your socks are not really socks, just cloth wrapped around your feet. They have not been clean since they were stitched. You boil them sometimes, when the smell becomes too much, when the itch turns into pain. But boiling only kills what lives there. It does not remove the memory. Some people use lye, some use ash, some just scrub with rocks. You saw a woman once crouched beside a stream, pounding her husband's shirt flat with a stone. She looked like she was trying to kill it. Maybe she was. In winter, no one even pretends. You wear the same layers day after day. You hang them near the fire to dry. You turn them inside out. You sprinkle them with flour, or herbs if you have any. But you do not wash. The water is too cold. The air is worse. You would rather stink than freeze. Your coat smells like horse. Your scarf smells like breath. Your gloves smell like the insides of your pockets. You learn not to notice. You learn not to care. But others notice. They always do. At church, the pews reek, bodies packed together, wool soaked in sweat. Someone coughs, someone wheezes, someone smells like old milk. The room grows hot, the windows stay closed. And the preacher says this is how we test our souls. At market, people sniff each other before they speak. They keep distance if they can. They wipe their hands on aprons before offering a shake. They breathe through their mouths. They pretend not to flinch. You once borrowed a jacket from your neighbor. A mistake. It was damp when you put it on. Not wet. Damp. Like it had been worn by someone who did not stop sweating for days. The inside was slick. The sleeves stuck to your arms. You wore it for 3 hours and still feel it sometimes in your dreams. Children rarely get new clothes. They inherit pants with patched knees, shirts with stretched collars, dresses that used to belong to someone dead. They wear them until the seams give out. Then they are turned into rags. And even those rags are not thrown out. They are soaked in vinegar, used to scrub floors, stuffed into shoes, burned only when nothing else will catch fire. You own 3 shirts. One is for every day. One is for Sundays. One is for when the others become too rotten to wear. The Sunday shirt has been worn to weddings, funerals, and trials. It has not been washed in years, but it is folded carefully, smoothed with the palm, treated like linen touched by angels. There is no such thing as fresh, only less filthy. You once dreamed of linen sheets, bleached white, hung in the sun, smelling of wind and flowers. You woke with your face pressed to a pillow stained yellow, the corner damp with your own breath. You laughed. You could not stop. Your clothes are not garments. They are armor against cold, against judgment, against the truth of your own body. They carry your days in their seams, the smoke from last season's fire, the grease from your last meal, the sweat of 100 silent hours spent working, walking, waiting. And when you hang them outside on a line strung between 2 crooked nails, you do not expect them to be clean when you return. You just hope the breeze has made them slightly less alive. You have not sat on a toilet in your life, not a real one, not the kind you have read about in stories or seen sketched in travelers' books from abroad, not the kind with a seat and a lid and a place for everything to go where it will never come back. You wish. Instead you squat, behind barns, beside trees, over holes dug shallow and wrong. You know the sweet smell of soil mixed with rot. You know what it means to balance on your heels with your breeches bunched around your ankles and the wind biting at your thighs. The world does not stop for your shame. You do what needs to be done. And then you leave it there. Sometimes the hole is too full. Sometimes it is just a pile hidden under a thin layer of straw. You pretend not to see it. You pretend not to gag. You dig another hole nearby. Or you move on and pretend you never needed it in the first place. At night, you use the chamber pot. A wide-mouthed thing made of tin or clay or whatever could be spared. It lives under the bed. You do not think about it during the day, but at night it becomes your companion. You reach for it without looking. You position yourself in the dark. You hope your aim is true. In winter, it is cold enough to make your skin seize. In summer, it smells so thick it could choke you. The pot is emptied each morning. Not washed. Emptied. Carried out the back door and flung into the ditch, or the alley, or the nearest patch of mud, already black with filth. The streets stink. That is the first thing visitors say. The locals do not notice. Or they pretend not to. There is waste in every corner. Human, animal. It seeps into the dirt and waits there, bubbling up with each boot step. Children play beside puddles that shimmer with strange colors. Green, yellow, worse. They chase rats without realizing where those rats have been. They fall, they touch, they laugh. You learned early to watch where you stepped. One wrong foot, and your boot could vanish into something soft and wrong. The kind of mud that leaves a smell on your skin for days. The outhouses are worse. If you are lucky, you live near one. A small shack, with a pit beneath. No door, or a broken one. A seat cut from splintered wood that leaves marks on your thighs. You have seen spiders there the size of your fist. You have swatted flies off your knees as they circle the pit like priests around a grave. Some families share their privy with the neighbors. Some charge to use it. You pay with coins or favors or firewood. You wait in line like it is church. You keep your eyes down. You do not talk. Inside, the smell hits you like a blow. You breathe through your mouth. You try not to touch anything. You do what you came to do, and you leave before the wood creaks or the boards shift. Once, you heard of a boy who fell in. He lived, but no one would speak to him after. He moved away, or died. You cannot remember which. Chamber pots are not just for the bedroom. They go with you when you travel, when you visit, when you are sick, when you are too weak to make it to the barn or the yard or the edge of the woods. They sit beside you like a dog, quiet, unblinking. Some people use buckets, some use jars. You have even seen someone use a hollowed gourd. It does not matter what it is, as long as it holds and does not crack. Emptying the pot is the worst part. You grip it by the sides. You carry it at arm's length. You avoid the neighbors if they are outside. You tip it quickly, let it splash, hope the rain comes soon to wash it all away. Sometimes the pot is full before morning. Someone is sick. Someone had stew that did not sit right. Then you must decide. Use it again, or brave the night air. You have gone out barefoot before, across wet grass, into a field where the wind howls through the trees. You squat behind a stump and hope nothing is watching. Hope nothing is moving in the dark. Once a raccoon startled you and you fell backward into your own mess. You threw away your trousers and did not speak for a day. Not all homes have privies. Some use slop trenches, shallow ditches that fill with rain and worse. They overflow in spring. They freeze in winter. They breed insects in the warm months. Clouds of them. Swarms that rise like smoke. You once stepped into one by accident, sank to your ankle, the skin blistered by morning. Your mother wrapped your foot in rags soaked with vinegar. You still cannot wear that boot without remembering. There are no rules for who goes where. Men, women, children. Everyone squats. Everyone carries a pot. Everyone dumps it when they must. Modesty is for the rich. Privacy is for the dead. In town, some people try to be clever. They toss their pots from the windows, out into the street. They shout a warning if they remember. But not always. You have seen men covered in filth from the neck down, screaming curses into the air. You have seen children pelted with waste, and their mothers rush to brush it off like dust. There are fines for doing it during the day, but no one enforces them. Everyone does it. Even the constable's wife. Even the baker. Some people dig trenches and cover them with planks. They walk across them as if that makes the waste disappear. It does not. It seeps. It rises. It waits. When it rains, it floods. The waste climbs back up from where it was thrown. It runs through the streets in rivulets. It gathers in cellars. It stains shoes. It finds cuts. It makes them sting. Disease follows. Of course it does. You know the names. Typhus, flux, fever, words whispered when someone begins to sweat and cannot stop, when the skin turns yellow, when the mouth foams, when the body empties itself until it stops. You are told it comes from bad air, from curses, from cold drafts and sinful thoughts. But you know, you have always known, it comes from the chamber pot, from the pit, from the puddle outside your door. And yet, you go on squatting, you go on emptying. You go on hoping that today is not the day you slip, because in colonial America, there is no toilet, only the pit, the pot, the stink, and the hope that you step around it just one more day. You know the day is coming before it starts. Your back aches in a strange, dragging way. Your belly feels full of rocks. Your thighs feel heavy. You wake up sticky with sweat and something darker, something deeper, the kind of weight that does not leave when you sit or when you stand. You do not need a calendar. You know your own body. You can smell the change in your sheets before you even roll over. There is no warning bell, no privacy, no gentle way to go about it. You wake up bleeding, and you do what you must. You reach under the bed and find the bundle, a bundle wrapped in worn linen, folded tight, tied with a bit of twine. Inside it are rags, real rags, torn from old shirts, old shifts. Cloth so used it no longer has a pattern. Some are thin as gauze, some are stiff with past use. You choose the best one and fold it into a pad. You wedge it between your legs and pray it stays put. There are no pins, no straps, no elastic, nothing to hold it there but pressure and hope. The first steps you take are careful. You feel every shift, every warm trickle. You know already that this rag will not be enough. It never is. But you only have so many, and there is no running water. You soak the used ones in a basin near the hearth. You do not ask for help. No one helps with this. You kneel, you scrub, you wring them out with your bare hands and hang them by the fire to dry. You do not flinch at the smell. You know it too well. There is shame in it. Of course there is. The shame is thicker than the blood. Women do not speak of it, not even to each other. You nod. You share looks. You press your lips together when someone winces as they sit. But you do not speak, not aloud. Men act as though it does not exist. They see the blood on your skirts and pretend it is mud. They see your eyes go glassy from cramps and say you are being lazy. They complain when your hands shake at the table. They roll their eyes when you snap at them. You were told once that the bleeding is God's curse, that Eve brought it down on all women when she ate the fruit. You believed that for a while, until you realized how much of this world was made to punish women for simply existing. Some girls do not know what is happening the first time. They cry, they scream, they think they are dying. You did not scream. You sat in silence and felt it soak through your dress and onto the floor. Your mother handed you a rag without a word. That was your lesson. You have tried using moss before, stuffed it into your underclothes. It absorbs, but only for an hour. After that, it turns slick and slippery, worse than nothing. Once, you tried cotton. too soft. It fell apart in your hands. Once, you bled through 3 rags in an afternoon. You walked home with your dress tied around your waist, legs streaked in red, trying to hide behind the trees. There are women who swear by herbal rinses, sage, yarrow, lavender, if they can find it. They brew it strong and pour it between their legs with shaking hands. Some say it helps with the pain. Some say it keeps the blood from coming too heavy. You do not know if it helps, but sometimes you do it anyway, because doing something feels better than doing nothing. Pain comes in waves, not sharp, not sudden, but low, deep, like the grinding of a cartwheel over stone. You feel it in your bones, in your spine, sometimes in your teeth. It makes you slow. It makes you brittle. You snap at people you love. You cry over spilled flour. You laugh when someone falls just to keep from screaming. You do not ask for rest. There is no rest. The cows still need milking. The bread still needs baking. You are expected to work through it, smile through it, bleed through it, and do not leave a stain where anyone can see. You keep extra skirts in the corner. For emergencies, you learn how to sit on your heel, to shift the flow. You learn how to scrub blood from linen before it sets. Cold water first, then ash, then a prayer. Some women free bleed. They cannot afford rags. They do not have time to wash them. They bleed into their shifts, into their aprons, into the ground. They smell strong. They move carefully. You respect them. You pity them. You are afraid to become them. Pregnancy delays the bleeding. That is the only reprieve, and even that comes with its own suffering. Some women have 10 children just to avoid the monthly curse. Others never bleed again. Their bodies give up or give out. There are stories of men leaving their wives for being unclean, for staining the sheets, for bleeding too loud, for showing their pain in public. There are stories of girls locked in barns until it passes, of witches accused for bleeding too much, or not enough. The old woman down the road says a hot stone on the belly will stop the pain. She heats one in the fire and wraps it in cloth. It burns, but you try it. You lie flat on your back and hold it there until your skin sizzles. It helps a little, or maybe you just tell yourself that. You do not know what other women in other places do. You imagine silk rags. You imagine scented oils. You imagine baths and soft hands and understanding voices. But here, you bleed in silence. You wrap your rags. You boil your water. You clench your teeth and press your hands against your belly until the cramp passes. Then you stand, and you keep going. You have bled through dresses in church, in market, on the back of a wagon with strangers. You have walked home with a trail behind you like a wounded animal. You have hidden your stained cloth beneath firewood. You have buried it in snow. You dream sometimes of clean linen, of a drawer full of folded rags, each one soft and thick and fresh. You dream of someone handing you a cup of tea and saying, I know, but that is just a dream. Because in colonial America, women do not get comfort. They get cloth, they get pain, they get silence, and they carry it all in the cradle of their bodies every month, every year, for most of their lives. And no one thanks them for surviving it. You do not go to the doctor unless you are already dying, because doctors do not heal. They poke, they cut, they guess, and most of the time, they make it worse. You walk into the room, and you can smell it. Not herbs, not alcohol, not anything clean. It is sweat, old blood, pus, the kind of smell that settles into the back of your throat and stays there. There is no white coat, no quiet clipboard. Just a man in an apron with hands that shake and teeth that are worse than yours. Sometimes he is also the barber. That is normal. One day he shaves your uncle. The next day he lances a boil on your cousin's spine. He wipes his blade on the same cloth and moves on to the next job. If he has water, it is cold. If he has a towel, it is already stained. You do not ask what is in his tools. You do not want to know. Hooks, tongs, knives, bone saws. Most are black with rust. Some are handmade. They clink together in a leather pouch that smells like dead things. If you are lucky, he gives you something to bite down on. A strap, a stick, a cloth rolled tight. You take it between your teeth and pray you do not scream. Screaming is weakness. Screaming is fuel for the others watching. Because yes, they watch. Your father, your brother, the neighbor who brought you here. No one leaves the room. No one looks away. You came because of a pain in your chest, but he says your blood is thick, that it needs thinning, that the spirits are trapped inside you, that your humors are unbalanced. So he pulls out the bowl and the blade. He ties your arm with a strip of fabric that smells like meat and tells you to sit still. The blade is small but fast. You do not see it. You only feel it. The heat, the sting, the rush. Blood spills into the bowl like wine at a feast. You feel dizzy before he tells you to breathe. Your fingers tingle. Your eyes blur. He says that means it is working. You are not sure what working feels like, but you are too tired to argue. When he is done, he presses a rag to your arm and tells you to rest. You do, because you cannot move. Your ears ring. Your lips are dry. The rag sticks to your skin as the blood clots. You know he will reuse it. You do not care. Bloodletting is the cure for nearly everything. Fever, madness, gout, melancholy, headaches, pains of the heart and the soul. If it hurts, let it out. That is the rule. You have seen people die with bowls still warm in their laps. Sometimes they use leeches. You find them in ponds, in swamps. You press them to the skin and wait. They latch, they swell, they fall off. It is said they know where to draw. You do not trust them, but you do not trust the man with the blade either. Boils are common. On the neck, behind the knee, in places you do not talk about. They grow until they shine, until they throb, until they feel like they will burst on their own. You go to the barber doctor and show him your shame. He nods. He pulls out a knife. No gloves, no disinfectant, no warning. He cuts. The pus explodes onto his apron. He wipes it away with his bare hand. He does not flinch. You do. Then he stuffs the wound with cloth, or leaves it open to the air. Sometimes he pours hot wine into the hole. Sometimes nothing at all. He says the pain means you are healing. Infections are not understood. People die of small wounds, a scratch from a nail, a splinter left in too long, a bite from a rat. They swell, they blacken, they stink. You know the smell of rotting flesh. You know what it means when the skin turns green. You hope it is not your time. But you have seen it happen. A boy breaks his leg and dies of fever 2 weeks later. A woman bites her tongue during childbirth and never speaks again. A man cuts his hand chopping wood, and by dusk his whole arm is the color of coal. And still the barber says he can fix it. He says he has a salve. He says he can cut away the bad part. He says you must trust the process. You do not. Teeth are their own hell. When they rot, and they always rot, they turn black at the roots and yellow at the tips. They ache, they pulse, they split. You try to ignore it. You chew with the other side. You drink cold water through clenched lips. But there comes a day when you cannot take it anymore. So you sit in a wooden chair and open your mouth. He reaches for the tongs. They are iron. They are shaped like a bird's beak. He fits them around your tooth and rocks it back and forth. You scream. He tells you to stop. You scream louder. Then he pulls. It does not come easy. It snaps. It breaks. Sometimes he pulls it out in pieces. Sometimes the root stays in, sometimes your jaw fractures. He keeps going. When he finishes, you cannot close your mouth. Blood pours down your chin. You taste metal and rot. He pats your shoulder and says it will feel better tomorrow. It does not. You have heard of people sewing their own wounds. You have seen it. A man using horsehair and a needle heated in a flame, his face white, his hands trembling. But steadier than any doctor you have ever met. There is no anesthesia, only whiskey, or biting a belt, or fainting. That is the closest thing to mercy you ever get. You once saw a woman with a wound on her thigh. She fell from a ladder. The skin split open like fruit. She was carried to the doctor and laid out on a table. No privacy, no curtain. Her dress hiked up, her legs bare in front of 6 men. He cleaned it with a rag soaked in beer. Then he stitched it. No warning, no kindness. Just thick thread and heavy fingers. She did not cry, not then, but when it was over, she wept until she could not breathe. You wonder if she ever walked the same again. Children are bled, infants, toddlers, the old, the frail. It does not matter. Blood must be let. Illness must be drained. It is the rule. If it fails, it is the fault of the patient. They were too far gone, too sinful, too weak. No one blames the doctor. He walks with pride. He is invited to dinners. He speaks in long words and short sentences. He smells of smoke and salt and death, but he holds your life in his hands. So when the fever comes, when your skin turns hot and your tongue swells, when your chest feels like it is being crushed, you send for him anyway, because what else can you do? You lie back, you close your eyes, you feel the blade touch your skin, and you pray, not for healing, just for something less than agony. You wake before dawn and already the air is thick. It is not the cold bite of winter nor the sweet promise of spring. It is something worse. It is the smell of death rising from every alley and doorway. It is the rot of bodies left in the streets. It is the promise that you may not survive another sunrise. The city is full of whispers. Smallpox has arrived by sea. Yellow fever rides on the backs of mosquitoes in the docks. Every ship that pulls into the harbor brings more sickness, more rumors, more panic. By midday, the sun is already high and hot, baking the stones and turning every puddle into a brew. You walk through the marketplace and see bellies bloated by fever. You hear coughing that rattles through the lungs and makes people clutch their chests. You smell the sweat of so many bodies pressed together and the faint stink of vomit clinging to torn clothing. They say that smallpox shows itself first as a fever and aches. Then the rash appears. Spots on your skin like the marks of God's anger. They fill with pus. They burst in your sleep. You wake with blood and scabs on your sheets. They say you can survive if you keep your wounds clean. They say you must isolate yourself. They say that compassion is a luxury. They say that the only thing to do is pray and hope. You try to help your neighbor's child when the fever hits him. You bring water and calamus root tea. You hold a cloth to his forehead. His body twitches under your hand. His eyes roll back. You wonder if he will remember your kindness or if he will only remember the pain. In the streets you see houses boarded up, doors nailed shut, flags hung from windows. A red cross painted on the wall means the plague is inside. No one enters, no one leaves. The family waits for either recovery or burial, whichever comes first. Burials are too many for the churchyard. They dig mass graves outside the city walls. You see men cart bodies on flatbeds. They cover them with straw to mask the smell. They bury them without ceremony. No priest, no prayers. Only dirt and haste, and the sound of shovels. Sometimes the graves collapse. Sometimes the stench rises again. Then they cover the bodies with lime. They say it helps. You hope it does. Yellow fever arrives like a storm. It begins with chills. Then a fever so high it burns your blood. Your eyes turn yellow. Your skin turns yellow. Your urine dark like ink. They called it black vomit because you throw up blood. You know the name. You hear it every day. Doctors pack you in blankets. They wrap you in hot cloths. They bleed you again. They feed you broth made from boiled chicken. They hope you sweat out the poison. They hope the breaking point of fever will cleanse you. But sometimes the fever cracks your mind first. You see visions. You speak to people who have already died. You reach for the sky and laugh at the sun. Then you collapse. Your body shudders and you drown in your own sweat. Families watch from windows. They shout prayers. They step back when you cough. They clutch their children. They whisper that the end is near. In the alleys, the dead pile up. Rats move among them. Cockroaches feast. The city refuses to smell itself. It refuses to reckon with the tide of sickness flooding every house. Instead, it goes on. The bells toll for the dying and the dead. The bells toll for the lost and forgotten. The bells toll for those who pray for deliverance but know nothing will come. Your laundry machine would thrill you. Instead, you beat your clothes on rocks by the river. You haul them home dripping and muddy. You hang them across lines and hope the wind and sun will freshen them. You dust them with flour or herbs. You patch the holes. You wear them until they shred. Then you turn them into rags. Then you patch those rags. Then you pray for rain so the mud will wash out. Then you pray for sun so the damp will evaporate. You watch your socks stiffen in the freeze and rot in the heat. You carry extra layers because you never know when you will see water again. You laugh at deodorant. In colonial America, you would smell like smoke, sweat, and stench, and you would not know the difference. Lice would nest in your hair no matter how much powder you use. Fleas would bite your ankles through your stockings. Bedbugs would feast on your skin through quilts and linen. You would sleep on boards or straw and never feel safe. You would dream of bites and wake to welts. You would itch until you bleed. You would scratch at the skin behind your knee until it scabs. You would find a bedbug in your hair after you wash. You would tear out handfuls of newborn calves' hair and call it better than nothing. You scoff at running water. You would juggle buckets. You would dig wells and fill barrels. You would carve gutters of clay to ferry rain from roofs. You would sip from the same cup as your family and pray no one is ill. You would drown fruit in vinegar to cleanse it. You would fight for a sip of water when the well is frozen. You would melt snow in pots on the hearth and drink it lukewarm. You would boil it for tea and not joke about gravity. You would add cinnamon to mask the stink of a stagnant barrel. You would hide the taste of ash and algae. You sneer at bottled water. In colonial towns, you would fetch water from a river that also carries waste from homes upstream. You would dip for fish and drink for thirst. You would tumble down stone steps into the same current you wash in. You would filter it through cloth. Then you would pray. You would pray none of the typhus or cholera has survived the sun. You would guess it did. Your modern toothbrush is a marvel. In colonial America, you would dip a rag in soot or powdered charcoal and scrub your teeth until they bleed. You would rinse with rum or cider to quiet the pain. You would swallow grit and blood. You would spit behind the barn and curse the world. You would lose teeth and trade them for copper coins. You would suck clove oil on your gums, hoping the ache will pass. You would avoid smiling. You would hold a hand to your mouth when you speak. You would ask the preacher for a blessing because you fear the rot will spread beneath your tongue. Your shampoo smells of lilies. You would shampoo with ashes. You would gather wood ashes from the hearth and mix them with water. You would scrub your hair and watch the grime run down your neck. You would smell like burnt toast and smoke. You would try a rinse of vinegar, only to burn your eyes. You would slather your hair in tallow and duck's fat to ward off lice, only to smell like a cooked fowl. You would wear a cap to hide the mess. Your clean sheets would make you weep. You would dry your bedding on bushes. You would turn it daily so the sun can bleach the worst stains. You would never lie on a fresh mattress. You would feel the springs creak. You would smell the sweat of strangers. You would dream of silk and velvet. Then you would wake to burlap and straw. Your warm shower would feel like heaven. You would boil water for a bucket bath. You would stand on a board near the hearth and pour it over your head with a ladle. You would shiver in the breeze. You would gasp. You would wish you were drowning. You would tinker with the temperature and burn your scalp. You would pour yourself warm water once a week. You would hope the fire does not go out. Your luxury bathroom would charm you. You would use the chamber pot. You would catch your breath and duck behind the smokehouse. You would hope the wind does not blow the door open. You would squat and hold your breath. You would wipe with corn husks until they scratch your skin. You would throw them into the mud. You would wish you had a way to bury your own waste. You would dream of porcelain and plumbing. You would know you will never see it. Your modern cleaning products would confuse you. In colonial America, you would scrub floors with rags and vinegar. You would scour walls with ash and sand. You would chase bugs with brine and brimstone. You would douse rats with hot coals. You would burn your own clothing to kill fleas. You would wonder if you are cleaning the house or burying it. You would weep at the knowledge that the dirt returns hours after you finish. Your dentist would astonish you. You would drink moonshine to numb the pain of a tooth pulled with iron pliers. You would wake with your gums bleeding and your jaw aching. You would ask for milk of roses. You would watch him drill a cavity with a bird bone. You would cradle your cheek and pray your jawbone does not splinter. You would nod when he says you should clean your teeth daily. You would nod and then ignore him. Your doctor would disappoint you. You would lie in a bed soaked in your own sweat and fever. You would inhale herbs and smoke. You would clench a rag in your fist as he cut your arm. You would bleed until you pass out. He would say your humors are unbalanced. He would say you must purge to live. He would say that death is a mystery. You would nod and pray. He is wrong. Your modern pharmacy would delight you. You would long for quinine. You would pine for aspirin. You would crave penicillin. Instead, you would swallow crushed willow bark. You would chug peppermint tea. You would gnaw tallow pills stuffed by your grandmother. You would choke on dried roots and herbs. You would pray they work. Your modern culture would surprise you. You would marvel at how quickly a hospital can fill a syringe. You would gasp at a doctor in gloves. You would bristle at a surgery room sterilized by machines. You would cry at the sight of running water that never ends. You would laugh at the idea of washing your hands before a meal. You would weep at the memory of your own hands scarred from scrubbing rags and soap. Your modern mind would reel at the simplicity of your own ancestors' struggle. You would look in the mirror and examine the smooth skin. You would press a finger to the television screen and watch water run. You would take a shower. You would scratch an itch. You would cough. You would feel the air move through your lungs and thank the world you were born too late. And yet you would still complain. You would still insist the water was too cold, the soap too harsh, the sheets too scratchy, the toilet seat too hard. You would still insist that modern hygiene is a burden. You would still quarrel with the idea of a full bath every day. You would still refuse to use a chamber pot for emergencies. You would still sniff at the idea of scrubbing floors by hand, because you have forgotten the grinding terror of a world where cleanliness is daily torture. You have forgotten the shudder of cold water on cracked skin. You have forgotten the taste of ash and blood. You have forgotten the damp chill of unwashed clothes. You have forgotten the constant fear of infection. You have forgotten the shame of your own body. You are safe now, but colonial hygiene waits. It lurks in the pages of history. It waits on the edges of your comfort. It reminds you that cleanliness is not guaranteed, that hygiene is not a right, that you would not last a day in its world. And if you forget, it will find you again, in a drop of water, in a patch of bondage rag, in a sneeze on a crowded street, in a fever that steals your breath, because in that world, soap stings, water freezes, cleanliness is a fantasy, and survival is the only standard that matters.